Hello and welcome to the Perkins and Strong Workforce training. My name is Autumn Gardia. I am the Director of Special Projects and Grants at Merced College. I oversee both our Perkins and Strong Workforce funds. I have been with the college for just under 14 years now, 7 of those years in the role of Director of Special Projects and Grants. And so in all of my positions at the college, I have worked with either workforce development and or career technical education. So I wanted to be able to provide this training to you to clarify what the Perkins and Strong Workforce funds are available for, and also answer any questions you might have later on in regards to the application. So even after you have watched this training presentation, you are more than welcome to reach out to me at any time with additional questions via email or phone, and I will provide my contact information at the end of the presentation. So what is Strong Workforce and what is Perkins? Both funding sources are here to serve our career technical education programs. And that means the students in our programs, we want them to be successful. And so that means if you are someone who falls under the area of instruction and you want to improve your program or increase capacity for your program, these are great sources of funding to be able to do that. Also, if you are someone who is under the student services area and you want to provide direct student support to CTE students, this is another opportunity to fund those types of projects. Our Perkins funding is really geared towards reducing the gap for special population students under several different core indicators, as Perkins refers to them. And the core indicators include student persistence, which is retention in our programs. Are we seeing students complete who have enrolled? Are we seeing them transfer to four-year institutions? And then technical skill attainment. Are we providing them with the skills needed to be successful in the workforce? And then, as I mentioned, serving specifically special population students. So what does special populations mean? So I included a side-by-side of Strong Workforce and Perkins in the email that I sent out with both applications for this upcoming year. And in that side-by-side, you will see on Perkins the definition of the different special populations. Going through the list, we have those who are economically disadvantaged, which is a large majority of our students who receive financial aid. Those who are ESL students, those who participate in our DSPS services, single parents, out of workforce individuals, youth who have aged out of foster care, and usually that happens at age 18, homeless individuals, youth with a parent in the active armed forces, and any student who is considered non-traditional. So a non-traditional student is a gender represented in that industry that is less than 25%, that makes up less than 25%. So for example, this might be a woman in welding or a woman in automotive profession. It could also refer to male students in nursing or childcare. And so looking at focusing on how do we outreach to those specific special populations. And this just wants to keep popping up. So let me close this out here. And then again, going back to our certificate, degree, and transfer, looking at completions, looking at student placements. Are they being placed in jobs if they've completed a certificate? And being very outcomes focused. So you want to be able to evaluate your project and how well you did with what you wanted to accomplish within your project by the end of your project. And what that means is that you have to set clear and measurable goals from the start. If this is something where you want to improve the number of disabled students in your program and how you serve them, then by what percentage or by what number do you want to see that happen by? And those are conversations that you could even have with our disabled student services departments and how you could do that. But you have to have a measurable results so that we can see, again, if you are successful by completion. Strong Workforce is very similar in some aspects and different in others. You'll see that it includes certificate, degree, and transfer focus, so completions and job placements. Strong Workforce focuses on providing more and better CTE. The more relates to increasing the number of completers out of our programs and the students enrolled in our programs, but really focused on completions and transfers, degrees, certificates. And then the better is improving the quality of our programs. Are we aligning to industry standards? How are we improving overall programs? And I had mentioned in Perkins, very student placement focused. This is also work-based learning and student placement focused as well. But Strong Workforce is more about capacity building, meaning are you increasing the number of students who are completing out of these programs? And to be able to increase the number of students that complete, you may need to add additional welders. You may need to have a portable building where you can add another section of classes. Whatever the case may be, it's focused on how do we increase the number of students that we're serving, and it could also be through new programs. Maybe we want to look into cybersecurity as an offshoot of our computer science program. Maybe we want to look at paramedic training as an expansion on our EMT program. Those are a good example of how you could use Strong Workforce funds to go ahead and develop those new programs. So you want to think of it as seed money, basically, but it's neither one of these funding sources are ongoing, meaning that even though we've had Perkins from year to year and Strong Workforce was approved for a 4-year funding cycle, meaning that the Chancellor's office after this first 24-month period will have another 24-month period. It could still be reduced at any point in time. It could be completely taken away. And so you don't want to rely on these funding sources as a continual funding source. So you want to keep that in mind as you're applying for different projects. And then, are you looking at data from labor market, from industry partners, your advisory meetings, from conversations you're having with K-12 and our workforce development board, i.e. WorkNet partners? Are you using the information that you get to drive your decision on applying for this specific project? And then also keeping in mind that you need to be outcomes focused. So Perkins and Strong Workforce are different in terms of how we receive the funding. Perkins is a federally funded, signed into law by President Trump on July 31st, 2018. The Perkins V Act is focused on strengthening career and technical education for the 21st century. It's really geared towards allowing students to explore, choose, and follow a specific career technical education path. It is reimbursement based, meaning that we do not receive a direct allocation to the campus. We apply through the Chancellor's Office, the California Community College Chancellor's Office for the funding. The Chancellor's Office applies through the federal government, and then the Chancellor's Office reimburses us for if our application is approved, they reimburse us on a quarterly basis. Perkins funding is a little bit more restrictive in terms of the requirements, what it can be used for, and also backup documentation for what we are doing. So for example, if you are asking for a stipend to do an outside project for your program, the time and effort forms are going to be required so that we can see hour for hour what your time was spent on in relationship to that project. And that has to be included for audit purposes. Perkins is on a 12-month spending cycle. So one fiscal year, we go from July 1 to June 30th of the following year. So this next year that you're applying for is funding that will go from July 1, 2021 to June 30th of 2022. We are required to report on a quarterly basis and provide an end of year annual report in the NOVA system, which is through the Chancellor's Office, and we report both on Strong Workforce and on Perkins in NOVA. You won't be required to do that. However, if you are awarded Perkins funding, you will be asked to provide quarterly report narratives that I will use in the quarterly reporting and end of year reports. There is an application process for both Perkins and Strong Workforce funding, which you will go over in just a bit. And then there is the stipulation that there is no supplanting. And if you are not familiar with supplanting, I will go over that as well. Strong Workforce is state funded. It's separated into two different distinctive pots of funding. One is local and one is regional. The local pot of funds is a direct allocation to Merced College through our apportionment schedule, which means we have a direct drawdown. The second pot of funds is regional funding, and it is dispersed to our Central Valley Motherlode Regional Consortium. And the members of the consortium make up a steering committee. The steering committee is made up of our CTE deans in the region, and they decide what projects that they would like to put regional funds towards. And usually that's not something that you have to worry about. Just know that your application may be approved under either regional funds or local funds. There are fewer restrictions with Strong Workforce funding. Fewer, I would say there's a little bit more flexibility in what you can spend the funds on as opposed to Perkins funding. Also, the spending timeline for Strong Workforce is a 24-month spending cycle. It just in this last year moved to a 24-month. It used to be a 30-month. So you do have a little bit more time if your project is more involved. especially if you have more capital outlay investments that you need to include. But just really making sure that you stay on top of your spending on any kind of equipment and purchases that you want to do very early on in your award. Especially with Perkins, you want to get those big items purchased within the first few months. So you should be ready to go. I already talked about the quarterly and annual reporting, as well as the application, and also no supplanting under Strong Workforce. So supplanting, just really want to reinforce that we don't want to take the place of funds that you are already receiving from the district, either through general fund, lottery funds, resource allocation, however you refer to that. You don't want to use Strong Workforce or Perkins funding to pay for something that you're already receiving district funds for. That is referred to as supplanting, and we can't do that. We can supplement, meaning we can increase the level of services that you are providing through a project, but we cannot supplant. We cannot use Perkins funding to pay for something that you used in Strong Workforce the year before. You cannot use Strong Workforce funds to pay for something that was paid for by Perkins in the year prior. And if you have questions about that, again, you can always reach out to me. If you're unsure as to whether or not you might be supplanting, let me know, because I'd rather catch that before you apply and complete the application process rather than later. So you're getting ready to begin your application, but you cannot forget that you're going to need to maybe vet your project ideas through a few different ways. One requirement of both applications is that you submit a copy of your advisory meeting minutes. And why do we want that? Just to make sure that you had an advisory? No, we want to make sure that your project has received input from industry partners, from K-12 partners, from hopefully also your workforce development / WorkNet partners, to say that it is a viable project and will positively impact the workforce. Are there going to be jobs available for the project program that you are proposing? How is it going to improve what you are currently doing? If your project is going to include facilities, maintenance work, and those departments, if you have a large piece of equipment that you're going to have to find space for, that you're going to need electrical for, potentially plumbing, again, anything that will involve our maintenance or facility departments, you need to go ahead and fill out a project request form. And that will let us know that you've had conversations with your dean, you've had conversations with facilities and maintenance, that this is going to be feasible. Also, that you're including any additional costs, not just the cost of the piece of equipment, but if there's going to be any additional contracted labor needed, or even internally labor from our electricians or anyone else, are those costs included in your overall budget? In a similar vein, if you are going to be purchasing technology such as computers or laptops, or anything that is going to require approval from our informational technology department, you also want to make sure that you fill out that project request form. Again, this will loop in the informational technology department. Sometimes we think that we can incorporate software into our existing system and we're not able to do that, or the functionality, our current functionality, doesn't get any better, it gets worse. So we need to make sure that we're having those conversations before we're approving those types of projects. On the budget side of the house, if you are purchasing supplies, equipment, contracted services, any of those things, you want to go ahead and have your quotes ready because you're going to have to include those with your application. So making sure that your quotes are from vendors within the past 30 days, a recent quote, and knowing that if you are awarded, that you're going to have to get an updated quote. So just keeping that in mind. Also, if you are wanting to purchase items from a vendor that we have never used at Merced College, there's going to be some additional paperwork needed. The vendor will have to fill out a W-9, and it may take a tiny bit longer just to get in the system. So just a heads up on that. If you are looking to propose a project that's going to include personnel, maybe you want to hire someone who does outreach for the special populations, specifically for your CTE program, or, and I'm just throwing that out there as an example. It could be, again, anything that focuses on career technical education and is going to serve students or support the work. Then you need to make sure that you're having conversations with our fiscal services department. Our grant accounting specialist is Lori McComb. And so whenever we are putting together grant applications, we always go to her first to help us figure out salaries and benefits. You can project that you're going to hire somebody at $25 an hour for so many hours, for so many months of time. But if you don't have those benefits included, you're missing a large chunk of the cost of the project. And so we just need to make sure that we are being getting ahead of that and making sure that all costs are included, because we don't want to approve something like that and then come back and find out that you did not have the benefits included. And so you're not going to be able to support that person. If you are looking to support a person that was supported in the year prior, you also need to make sure in your new application that you are including any kind of step increases in those projections. And then also just a reminder that these funding sources are grants and they are not permanent. So you need to plan for sustainability and you need to figure out how you are going to fund these, if it's their positions, in the next years. It's possible for it to get funded again, but you know, in terms of many years, it's not likely. And we also don't know, you know, funds could be cut or taken away at any time, and that would put that position in a hard place. Also, just keeping in mind for strong workforce, you need to include labor market information, and that for Perkins, you're going to need to include your core indicator report. There's a link to the how to pull your LMI on the strong workforce application. And there is a link on how to pull your core indicator report on the Perkins application. Okay, so this is a part of the document that I showed you earlier with the side-by-side comparison. And this is just going over allowable expenditures versus those expenditures that are not allowable. And I'm not going to go through these line by line. I would say that a big one for Perkins is that you don't want to plan for any construction, facilities, furniture, through Perkins. Those are things that you would want to put through Strong Workforce if needed. Also, you'll see that supplanting is #1 on there. So just a reminder on that. We cannot pay for student internships through Strong Workforce. That's new in the 2021 legislation that came down. And so that was eliminated. Also, you'll see that alcohol, entertaining, lobbying is all mentioned as not allowable in Strong Workforce, but it's not mentioned under Perkins is not allowable. It's not spelled out in Perkins, but I will tell you it's not allowable. And I probably don't need to tell you that because our college wouldn't allow it. So one other thing that I think people ask a lot about is food. Can I buy food? I hear that in different grant webinars. Can I buy food with this funding for meeting, for events? I would say stay clear of it. It's just really not a good use of the funding. Are there exceptions? Yes, but as a general rule of thumb, don't plan on using your Perkins or Strong Workforce to purchase meals. I'm going to take a quick sip of water here. Before we move on. Okay. So let's go ahead and start on our Perkins application. Okay, so this is what our Perkins application looks like. And I did notice that there's a couple of incorrect dates on this one. So even though this is our 2021 Perkins application, you'll notice in the second paragraph, it says that the award will be from July 1, 2020. That should be July 1, 2021. And then it says completed by June 30th, 2021. That should be June 30th, 2022. So I apologize for the error on that. You can go ahead and look through more guidelines at this link here at Perkins Funding. This first page is really going to cover what your project title is, what program you fall under, an area. Whoever's applying, you are considered the PI, a principal investigator, or the project lead. That's you. So you'll put your name there. And then what I would do is the very close to the last page is our budget detail. After you completed that budget detail, then I would come back to this top page and have my overall budget and include that there. Other stakeholders, that's going to include any of your industry partners, your workforce development board, your K-12 partners. And then, as I mentioned, Perkins is first and foremost focused on the core indicator report and making sure that you understand where your program lies on the core indicator report. So we'll go ahead and look at that right now. Okay, so on this Perkins core indicator report, it'll say 4 up here. We're in 5. It's just the Chancellor's office hasn't updated that there. So you're going to select the 6-digit top code. You're going to select Merced College. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to choose Bakersfield College. So we're not singling out any program at our college. And then you're going to select the 2021 year. And then you're going to select your top code. If you don't know your top code, which stands for taxonomy of programs, it's the number coding system for our programs through the Chancellor's office. Then you're going to select your top code, and I think the one I did earlier was administration of justice. So I'm looking for that one again. There we go. And then you're going to click on view report. Okay. And now you're going to ask me, Autumn, why do I have to do this? I did not have to do this last year. And that is true. And the reason for that is because our CTE dean, I believe, was pulling all of these reports on your behalf. Although that was probably easier, a whole lot easier on you, it did not provide you with the information that you needed to drive your decision-making on your project. And so I wanted you to be able to understand and look at what is required and expected of us when we're looking at data on our programs. And so you will see here core indicator 1 is technical skill attainment, and you will see count of students. So count of students in CTE cohort refers to CTE concentrators. Concentrators are students who are enrolled in 12 plus CTE units. Then you will see the special populations listed out below here for under that first core indicator. So again, these are counts and totals, and then these negotiated levels are percentages. So you will have, for example, for this one, the state negotiated level for non-traditional students in this program, the target was 91.75%. The district negotiated level on what the district said needed to meet was 85.9. This college, Bakersfield College, met their performance and in fact exceeded it by 3.9. So they got 88.96. So you will see that for every single core indicator. And then you will see NA and NR in certain categories. NA is not applicable, meaning less than 10 students made up the denominator. NR is not reported. So on NRs, we may need to find out why those numbers are not being reported. And that's something we can do through our institutional effectiveness area department. Also maybe conversations with your dean, your instructional dean. So I don't want to go into this in too much length, only that you should be familiar with your numbers and whether or not you're meeting or not meeting your numbers. If you are below, that's probably an area you want to focus on your application. So for example, right here, line 5, the ESL students, they were under their target by 3.8. So they're going to need to address that in their application. And then once you have completed this report, it does need to be signed off by both you and your dean, showing that you guys reviewed these numbers together. And that will be included in your application. Okay, so after you have pulled your core indicator report, you're going to go ahead and use that information to complete the rest of your application. So this is asking you, where are you below standard? What program improvements are you going to make? And then just asking you to count how many core indicators are at or above the negotiated level. Are above, sorry, is number 11, are below 12. How many NAs or NRs do you have? If there's no core indicator report, if there's no report available to you, there's no data provided, if across the board it's at NAs, it could potentially be because you have a new program and there's no data that's being drawn up through our MIS colleague system to report to the chancellor's office. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're a newer program. That may be one of the reasons. So those top questions are asking about the district negotiated level, and these bottom ones are asking about the state negotiated level. And then telling us what you're going to do with the funds. What specific activities are you going to be using the funding for? Have you completed your program review, or is this project in your program review? Have you used Perkins dollars in the past? Again, we don't want to keep funding the same projects with grant funding year to year as much as possible. List any grants your program currently receives. And these questions are from year prior's application, so they may sound familiar to you. If there are any risks, then you might ask, well, what kind of risk are you talking about? If you think there may be any delay in regards to purchases, or maybe it involves part of your curriculum process that may cause a delay in your project. Anything that could potentially cause a delay, you should list here. Then we want to know how your project aligns with our student success metrics. So you'll read through these. And I won't, there's a couple of them that, well, actually a few of them that automatically stick out to me and that you will recognize align to what Strong Workforce and Perkins are all about. And then there's required uses for Perkins funding. So we want to go ahead and provide career exploration and career development, professional development for CTE, providing skills and pursuing high skills, high wage, in demand industry sectors or occupations, support integration of academic skills into CTE programs. So maybe you are incorporating math or English into your welding program. And then planning and carrying out elements that support and implement CTE programs. And then evaluations. So all of your projects should fit under one or more of these areas. And then also just checking off here that you are using the permissive uses for the funding. Which permissive uses will you be addressing? You can click several. And then this last page is your budget. So you're going to want to put your purchases in the line items that correspond. So just making sure you understand if it's instructional equipment and it falls within this 501 to 4,999 amount, that you put those items that cost there. Our capital outlay is the over 5,000 line, professional development and trainings, and you may be asked to give more detail after approved, but overall amount should fall under these categories. And then as you're getting ready to complete, you're going to provide your name, your dean's name, and then you're going to save and submit the application to me via email. I am going to ask, once I have received it, for my administrative assistant to route it electronically to you to sign, and then it will automatically route to your dean to sign. We couldn't embed that in from the beginning because we all have different instructional deans. And so there may be some of you from area 3, from area 2, or who are working on projects. And so that's why we had to do it that way. So that is the Perkins application. And again, you're welcome to reach out to me in regards to questions. And then here is our Strong Workforce application. And you will see that it looks very similar to our Perkins application. I actually started with our Strong Workforce application and then modeled the Perkins one off of our Strong Workforce internal application. So same information on page 1. I won't go over that again. This one goes straight into plan rationale. So how will you improve the quality or increase the quantity of career technical education programs? Be very specific in what you are trying to accomplish. Numbers, percentages are great. Why is this project needed? What are the risks? What outcomes do you plan on impacting? And then you're going to want to read over the Strong Workforce program legislation. And then you're going to mark here that you attest to the following assurances. I am asked to do this on behalf of everyone once I submit the application in the NOVA system. So I also want to ensure that you understand these, the legislation and the metrics. Equity, how are you impacting? Similar to Perkins, our special population groups. And then labor market information. So here is where you may want to start working on, maybe even before you fill out your description. I mean, that's up to you. You can use any one of these labor market information sources. I like to use the Center of Excellence. It's going to ask you to include supply versus demand information. So what that means is you will look at the number of students who complete the program the last year versus the demand in the labor market for those students in that occupation. This is not the correct one. I was looking at these employment projections for another project that I'm working on. Okay, let's see here. So this looks scary, but I promise you it really isn't. You're just going to click on this supply tab down at the bottom. And then you're going to click on the appropriate tabs. Well, first you want to do enable content. You're going to select community college. You're going to select Central Valley North. You're going to select Merced. And then you're going to find your TOPS code. We'll select, I like to do the 6-digit as opposed to the 4 because it narrows it down a little bit more. I'm going to do business administration. So then it shows on average, 3-year average, we had 105 completers, student completers. And when you click on these little drop downs, it'll break it down into associate degree transfer. So then you have your supply. Those are the numbers that we're supplying. And then you're going to have to, you're going to want to write that number down. And then you're going to pull down your labor market data. Same thing, you're going to go to enable editing, demand, click on the demand sheet down at the bottom. There we go. And then similar to the supply, you're going to click Central Valley. You're going to click Merced. And then you're going to determine which occupation aligns with your program. So for business, since we've picked business and supply, we'll do business operations specialist, all other is one. So then you're going to look at the average annual number of job openings in our area. And this one says bachelor's degree. So I probably would select something that requires a 2-year. If you have an occupation closer to a 2-year, and that's not going to work. So, I mean, the closest one you can find will work. You can say that it requires bachelor's degree. We do have transfer students, obviously, so you can still use that average annual number of job openings. And that's your demand. So then you're going to select that you chose the Center of Excellence data. And you're going to want to include that labor market information with your application. So you can screenshot the supply and demand data that you used and save it to a Word doc and include that. Or if you want to, I wouldn't save the entire sheet. I would screenshot and include it that way. If you want to go over any of the other ways to pull LMI, I am happy to do that. ONET is another good one. Okay, so then we're asking how your project aligns with our student success metrics. And also how it aligns with vision for success. And I am not just randomly throwing out our California Community College initiatives out here to ensure that you guys know what they are. We are specifically asked these questions in the NOVA application. So for me to answer on your behalf, I have to know the answers to these questions. Same thing with Perkins. They're not random questions. They are based on what we're being asked of by the Chancellor's office. So Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which ones will you be impacting? And then similar to the Perkins application is the budget. Again, this is a 24-month spending cycle, so you'll see a budget for both years. Have you applied for other funding sources or considered other funding sources? And then again, your name typed in and then sent to me with all of your supporting documentation, including your labor market information. If you had to complete a project request form and had it signed off on, those will all be included with your email. And then Mackenzie Davidson will route to you for electronic signature and to your dean for electronic signature. And that is it for both applications. Just a reminder that applications are due April 16th. And review of applications will take place from April 19th through May 3rd. You will be notified of your award, whether through Perkins or Strong Workforce, by July 19th. Is it possible to receive notice of your award earlier than July 19th? Yes, it is. And then I just want to thank you for the time that you're taking to review this training. It does make it far easier on myself as the person who inputs the grant applications and manages the fundings, that you have this information prior to completion of your application. So thank you for taking the time. If you have any additional questions, you can reach out to me via email, or you can give me a call. That is my office number, and right now it's routing directly to my cell phone, so I will respond to you. And just a reminder that there's a lot of rules, regulations, and guidelines when it comes to grant funding, but really when you're thinking about your projects, just a reminder that it's all about moving the needle for our CTE students and their success within our programs. And so I would say to think big, to be creative, and not to let the guidelines hold you back, but really to have those discussions about your projects and ideas. And then if there's anything that you think will not work, talking to either myself, your deans, about how there's a possibility to make it work, especially if it's going to really impact student success. So we're not here to hold you back. We definitely want to use the funds to help move your programs forward and move student success forward. So thank you for your time. And again, feel free to reach out to me whenever needed.